I don't even know why I'm posting this. Maybe because I need to finally say it out loud, or maybe because writing it here is the only way I'll ever accept that it actually happened. My name's Travis, I'm 37, and until a few months ago, I thought I had a strong marriage with the most driven woman I'd ever met. Her name's Courtney. Ambitious. Magnetic. She could walk into a room and take it over without even raising her voice. We met working at a logistics company in Houston. She was in the operations department. I was doing finance analytics. We fell hard. She was my hurricane. Everything about her was fast, full of energy, and just enough chaos to make life feel exciting. We got married 4 years after we met. Bought a place in the suburbs. She took night classes for her MBA, and I supported her the whole way. When she landed a position at a fast-growing transportation startup, I celebrated it like it was my own win. It was the job she dreamed of: more pay, more power, and a corner office with a skyline view. It felt like we were stepping into the next chapter together. I didn't see the cracks at first. It started small. Late nights, weekend strategy sessions, back-to-back conferences in cities that didn't match what she'd told me just a week before. But I brushed it off. I trusted her. I told myself she was under pressure, that this was what success looked like in the corporate world: relentless, demanding, and sometimes messy. Then one morning, I noticed something. Courtney was sitting at the kitchen table in her silk robe, sipping her coffee, scrolling through her phone with this look on her face. Like something behind her eyes had shifted. Not tiredness. Not stress. Something colder. Emptier. "You all right?" I asked. She snapped her head up like she forgot I was even in the room. "Yeah," she said, then smiled, but it wasn't real. Not even close. And she didn't touch her coffee again. That day, something gnawed at me. I couldn't focus at work. Her smile, that expression, kept flashing in my mind like a warning light I couldn't explain. So, I did something I hadn't done in our entire marriage. I checked our shared calendar and compared it to a travel receipt she'd left on the counter. She'd told me she was in Austin the weekend before. The receipt was from Dallas. I froze. That night, I confronted her gently. I wasn't angry. I just asked, "Hey, did you say you were in Austin last weekend?" She blinked. "Yeah, I told you that." I placed the receipt on the table. "This says Dallas." Her eyes didn't move. No flicker of guilt. No panic. Just stillness. "I must have gotten the cities mixed up," she said. "We flew through both. It was back to back. I barely remember." Then she reached for her wine and took a slow sip, like she was rewarding herself for the lie. I didn't press. But I didn't sleep either. Something in my gut had changed. And I was about to find out just how deep the rot had gone. I tried to be rational. Logical. I'm a numbers guy. I wanted proof before I let my suspicions take over. But once doubt cracks the surface, everything changes. You notice more. You question what you once ignored. A few days later, Courtney said she had a late client dinner, something about landing a big partnership with a shipping firm based in San Diego. She wore a sleek black dress I hadn't seen before. Her perfume was heavier than usual. She looked incredible, but something in her posture felt performative. Too poised. Too precise. Around 10:30 p.m., she texted that the dinner was running late and she'd probably crash at a hotel nearby. "Too much wine to drive," she wrote. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I called her assistant. Nora was young, polite, and clearly didn't know I'd be reaching out. I just asked her plainly, "Hey, I was wondering what hotel Courtney's staying at tonight. I want to send her something." There was a pause. Then, I'm not sure what you mean." She didn't have anything on her calendar today. She left at 4. That was it. No meeting. No dinner. No client. When I hung up, I just sat in the dark living room, staring at the hallway. I didn't feel rage, not yet. Just this numb, growing sense that I was the only person still playing by the rules in our marriage. I didn't sleep that night. I waited. Courtney came home around 7:45 the next morning. Hair slightly tousled, eyes tired, wearing the same dress she'd left in. When she saw me on the couch, she stopped cold. "Didn't expect you to be up this early," she said, dropping her purse by the door. "Didn't expect you home this late," I replied. She walked into the kitchen like nothing happened, like it was a normal morning. I didn't push. I didn't accuse her. I just watched, studied her. And for the first time, I noticed something she didn't mean to show. Guilt. Not in her words. Not in her actions. But in the way her hand trembled ever so slightly as she poured her coffee. In the way she avoided my eyes when she asked, "You want breakfast?" "No," I said. I think I'm good. She nodded too quickly, too eagerly. That evening, I started going through everything. Credit card statements, flight receipts, text message backups I'd never checked before. What I found wasn't a smoking gun, but it was enough to smell the smoke. There were multiple weekend charges from luxury hotels in cities she never mentioned. Meals for two, spa visits, champagne room service, and a name I didn't recognize, R. Caldwell, linked to a reservation note. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I wanted the full picture. So, I did something I never imagined I would. I hired a private investigator. And within 48 hours, I learned that R. Caldwell wasn't a client, or a friend, or even just some guy. He was her boss. And she had been visiting his penthouse for nearly 6 months. What I didn't know yet, what would shake me to my core, was how deep the arrangement went, and what Courtney had agreed to in exchange for her meteoric promotion. But that part? That came later. And it changed everything. The investigator's name was Lee Barlow. Former state trooper turned PI, quiet and efficient. Didn't ask questions he didn't need to. After our initial meeting, he simply said, "Give me 72 hours. If there's anything there, I'll find it." There was. More than I was ready for. By the third day, he dropped a flash drive in my hand and said, "Don't watch this if you're not ready to know everything." Then he got in his car and drove off. No drama. No big speech. I waited until midnight. I couldn't breathe right when I opened the folder. There were photos, time-stamped, clear, damning. Courtney walking into the lobby of the Landmark Hotel in downtown Houston. Same hotel. Same man. Over and over. Friday nights. Sometimes Tuesdays. Every time, dressed in her most professional best. Not seductive, polished. Controlled. Like it was business. And in a way, it was. The last file was a recorded phone call. Lee had legally captured it from a restaurant booth where she was meeting with a female coworker. At first, it was small talk. Then the woman asked, "How's it going with Robert?" Courtney laughed. Not nervously. Not awkwardly. It was clean. Cold. "He's made it very clear what the trade-off is," she said. "He wanted loyalty. I gave him that." "You mean?" "Don't make me say it out loud," she cut in. "It is what it is. I got what I came for." There was a long pause. Then she added, more softly, "Travis is kind. He wouldn't understand. But this was always part of the path. Every woman at that level pays for the chair in some way." I turned off the file and just sat there, hands shaking. It wasn't just betrayal, it was calculated. Planned. She had weighed the consequences and decided I was expendable. And yet, she came home every night and kissed me like nothing had changed. The next morning, I didn't confront her. Instead, I went to our joint bank accounts and started making quiet moves. I pulled my name off everything that could be turned against me later. Froze my credit. Changed my passwords. Set up an attorney consultation without telling anyone. I still wasn't sure how far I was going to take it, but I knew I couldn't stay asleep at the wheel while my marriage was quietly dismantled behind my back. That night, she came home early. She walked in with sushi, kissed me on the cheek, and told me she got a big win today. I looked up from the couch and just asked, "Did Robert congratulate you in person?" She froze. For a second, just a second, her eyes went wide. Then she smiled. "Of course. We had a quick toast in the boardroom." "Boardroom? Right." I nodded slowly, watching her face. That was the moment I knew she'd keep lying as long as I kept pretending. She'd sold her conscience for a corner office. And what's worse, she thought I was too weak to do anything about it. But I wasn't. I was just getting started. The day after she brought home sushi like nothing had happened, I did something I'd never imagined I'd have the nerve to do. I walked into the building where Courtney worked. Not to cause a scene, not to embarrass her. Just to see it, to feel it, to understand the world she now belonged to. The security guard asked if I had an appointment. I told him I was just dropping off lunch for my wife. He smiled and let me through with a visitor badge. No one stopped me. No one looked twice. When the elevator doors opened on the 27th floor, the executive level, I stepped out into a world of quiet money and polished power. Sleek glass walls. Cold lighting. Men and women in silence, eyes locked on screens or whispering into headsets. Then I saw him. Robert Caldwell. Older than I expected. Early 50s maybe. Expensive suit. Charismatic. The kind of man who makes deals with a handshake but controls empires with a whisper. He was standing near the coffee station, talking to two junior staffers. Laughing. Commanding attention without even trying. He didn't see me. I turned back and left before Courtney ever knew I was there. But that brief moment was all I needed. I finally understood the pull, the influence, the way he'd shaped her new reality. He didn't have to threaten her. He didn't have to seduce her. All he had to do was offer her a door she never thought would open and stand back while she walked through it herself. I spent the next 2 weeks in total silence, playing my part, smiling when she came home, listening to her rehearse stories about demanding clients and late-night planning calls. I was no longer trying to catch her. I already had everything I needed. What I was doing now was preparing patiently, precisely, without anger. Then, like fate had a taste for dramatic timing, I got a call from Lee, the private investigator. "I think you're going to want to hear this one in person," he said. We met at a diner off I-45. He handed me another flash drive, along with a folded printout of an email chain between Courtney and Robert. One message stood out. It was from Courtney. It read, "I've complied with everything. I've kept it quiet. I've protected your name, your position. But I need your word that this last trip will guarantee what you promised. No more gray areas." Robert's reply was only one line. "The board will vote next quarter. Just be ready." Be ready? What the hell else had she agreed to? That night, she came home glowing. Literally glowing. She'd just received confirmation that she was being unofficially shortlisted for the executive director role. It would be the youngest promotion to that level in the company's history. And she said it with pride. No shame. No regret. Just raw triumph. I stared at her across the dinner table, my fork untouched. She smiled at me like everything was perfect. Like we were partners again. Like I hadn't seen with my own eyes the transactions behind her rise. "I knew this would be our year," she said. Our year. She had no idea that mine had just begun. Because what she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly imagine, was that I had just sent everything to the board. Every file. Every photo. Every email. Anonymously. I didn't do it out of revenge. I did it because she finally understood the hidden price of her promotion, and instead of refusing to pay, she quietly complied. That choice had consequences. And soon, she would face them all. It took 6 days. 6 long, quiet days after I sent the file to the board of directors. I expected them to sit on it, ignore it, maybe even cover it up. People like Robert don't fall easily. They have insurance policies, allies in high places, and secrets wrapped in more secrets. But power doesn't like loose threads. And Courtney, in her blind pursuit of status, had become a liability no one wanted to explain. On the 7th day, she came home early. Earlier than ever. I heard the door slam. Her heels clicked across the hardwood floor like gunshots. She didn't say hello. She didn't ask where I was. She stormed into the kitchen and opened the wine cabinet like it had insulted her personally. I watched from the hallway. She poured a full glass. No breathing. No pacing. Just one sharp inhale. Then she turned and stared out the window, silent. The city skyline blinked behind her, mocking. I stepped in slowly. "Tough day." She didn't answer. Then she finally whispered, almost to herself, "Someone sent the board. Everything." I kept my voice level. "Everything." She turned to me now, and her eyes were different. Not wide with guilt, not filled with fear, just stunned. Like her brain was still catching up to what her world had become. Emails. Photos. Meeting logs. Even audio recordings, she muttered. "The chairman called me in. Said they're conducting an internal review. Said I'm suspended pending clarification." I waited a beat. Did Robert get the same treatment? "No," she hissed. "He denied everything. Said he had no knowledge of any arrangements. He's blaming me. And I don't have any protection left." For the first time, I saw it. Panic. Real, raw, unfiltered panic. Not because she had betrayed me. Not because she was ashamed. But because the machine she sold herself to had decided she was disposable. I sat down at the table, folded my hands, and asked calmly, "What exactly did you give him, Courtney?" Her face went pale. "You don't understand how hard I worked." "Try me." She swallowed. "He said if I wanted to be in the room where the real decisions were made, I had to stop thinking like a wife and start thinking like a closer. That's what he called it. A closer." I didn't blink. "So you closed?" She looked down at her glass. There were lines I told myself I'd never cross. Then I crossed one. Then another. And suddenly, the lines were gone. There it was. Not denial. Not lies. Just quiet surrender. "I thought I could keep the 2 lives separate," she said, voice thin. "I thought if I kept coming home to you, if I smiled enough, made dinner, kept the rhythm, then maybe the other life wouldn't count." I stood up and looked her square in the face. "You traded our marriage for a title. You gambled with my trust, and you lost. Her lips trembled, but she said nothing. I walked past her toward the bedroom. As I reached the door, she called after me, not with anger, not with defense, but with desperation. Are you going to leave? I stopped, my hand on the doorknob. No, I said. Not yet. Because I wasn't finished. She needed to sit in the silence of what she'd destroyed. And the next step? That wasn't going to be mine. It was going to be hers. The next morning, Courtney didn't go to work. For someone who used to set her alarm at 5:45 a.m. sharp, drink a green smoothie by 6:10, and be on her laptop before most people even opened their eyes, this was abnormal. She didn't get out of bed. She didn't speak. She just laid there, back turned, like hiding from the world could erase what she'd done. I got dressed without a word. No guilt trips. No dramatic sighs. I wasn't angry anymore. I was beyond that. What I felt was absence. Like the person I'd married was a ghost now, and I was sharing space with a stranger who wore a face. By lunchtime, she still hadn't moved. I came home on my break just to check if she was okay. She sat at the kitchen island, wearing sweatpants, no makeup, her laptop open in front of her. I could tell she'd been refreshing her inbox for hours. Waiting. Dreading. Any updates? I asked. She flinched, like my voice startled her. They're voting tomorrow, she said quietly. They've already locked me out of the drive systems. No company email access. No client communication. No nothing. What happens if the vote doesn't go your way? She didn't answer. Instead, she closed the laptop, stood up, and for the first time in weeks, looked me in the eye. I never meant for it to get this far. I gave a small, bitter laugh. You think that changes anything? She looked down. No. Later that evening, her phone rang. It was Nora, her assistant. Courtney walked to the balcony to take the call, but I could hear just enough through the glass door. You're not going to believe this, she said in a whisper. HR's pulling everyone in for interviews. They're treating it like a harassment scandal now. Someone said they found voice recordings. I don't know how. I don't know who has them. She paused, then added something that sent a chill through me. They're not just coming for me. They're coming for Robert. That part one hadn't expected. When I submitted the evidence, I assumed she'd take the fall. I thought Robert would do what powerful men always do, bury the mess and walk away with a bonus. But the board must have smelled blood. Maybe they wanted a clean house. Maybe they were tired of his backroom deals too. Whatever it was, I had accidentally lit a fire bigger than I planned. And Courtney, she was in freefall. That night, she came to our bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed like a child about to confess breaking a vase. I got the promotion because I agreed to keep secrets. Not just his. Others. Things the board didn't want public. Things they didn't want traced. And I held it all in. I thought that made me valuable. You weren't valuable, I said coldly. You were leverage. Until you weren't. Her eyes watered, but she didn't cry. There was no point. I don't know how to come back from this, she said. Not with you. Not with them. Not with anyone. I looked at her, this woman who once stood at the top of the world, now too afraid to check her email, and for the first time, I felt something unexpected. Pity. Because now she truly understood the cost. Not just the humiliation, but the silence. The emptiness. The way betrayal doesn't scream or shatter, it echoes. Quietly. Constantly. I'm not going to stop you from rebuilding your life, I said. But it won't be with me. I left the room. And she didn't follow. Because deep down, she knew she'd already lost the only thing that mattered. And this time, there was no promotion that could save her. Ironically, the fallout didn't begin with a company press release or even a termination email. It started with a whisper, then a headline. That morning, I opened my laptop while sipping coffee, and there it was, a quiet little article buried in the business section of a local finance blog. The title read, Insider Scandal Brewing at Houston Logistics Giant. Sources point to unethical advancement in leadership shakeup. There were no names, no photos, just implications, hints. But I knew exactly who the sources were about, and I knew it wouldn't stay quiet for long. By that afternoon, it had spread. Twitter, LinkedIn, even Reddit forums were buzzing with speculation. People from Courtney's industry began sharing screenshots, reposting the article with captions like, if you know, and Houston drama's about to get messy. When I got home, the house was silent again, but this time there was a tension in the air that felt physical. Courtney was in the living room, sitting on the couch in complete stillness. The curtains were drawn. Her phone lay face down on the table, vibrating every few seconds with calls she clearly wasn't answering. She didn't even look up when I walked in. They know, she whispered. Everyone knows. I didn't respond. What was there to say? I've gotten 4 calls today. HR legal. And one from a journalist. Her voice cracked slightly, the composure starting to peel away. Nora said half the office is treating me like I'm radioactive. Robert hasn't said a word to anyone. Not a word. He's pretending like none of it ever happened. I sat across from her, but didn't move closer. I wasn't cruel, just done. She rubbed her temples and let out a low, bitter laugh. You know what's funny? They're offering me a severance package. Quiet exit, NDA, no lawsuits. Just vanish and don't cause noise. What are you going to do? I asked. I don't know, she said. If I sign the NDA, they'll bury everything and protect him. If I don't, I might go down harder than I already have. She looked at me then, and for once, she didn't look like my wife. She looked like a broken executive sitting in a deposition, trying to figure out which way to fall. You started this, didn't you? She asked. I didn't flinch. You did. I just stopped protecting the version of you that didn't exist. She didn't answer, just nodded slowly like she'd known the truth all along. That night, her mother called. I overheard the conversation, or rather, the implosion, from the hallway. You shamed yourself. And your marriage. Your father can't even look at the news right now. Her mother hissed over speakerphone. And don't come here thinking we'll clean it up for you. I'd never seen Courtney cry like that before. Not when she failed her first business school exam. Not when she lost her father to cancer 3 years ago. But now, alone, stripped of power, friends, respect, she finally wept. Not performative tears. Not strategic breakdowns. Just a woman who had climbed so high on someone else's ladder that she never realized it was leaning against a wall made of glass. And that wall had shattered. I didn't say anything. I didn't hug her. I just let her fall. Because sometimes the only way to rebuild someone is to let them crash all the way to the ground. That night, I slept in the guest room. She didn't knock. I don't even know if she slept at all. But in the stillness, I realized something vital. I no longer pitied her. I no longer hated her. I just didn't recognize her. And in the morning, she'd have one final decision to make. Not about her career. Not about Robert. But about whether she had the courage to admit to the one person she had never truly faced. Herself. The next morning was unusually quiet. Even the neighborhood felt still, like the universe was holding its breath before something important. I made coffee, packed my laptop bag, and opened the blinds in the kitchen, something Courtney usually did but hadn't touched in days. She walked in barefoot, hair tied up, wearing a plain gray hoodie I'd never seen her in. She looked small, not physically, but like the storm inside her had finally burned itself out. She sat down across from me without a word. I've drafted a letter, she said finally. To the board. To HR. No lawyers. No denials. Just the truth. I blinked, surprised. I told them everything. What I did. What I agreed to. And that I wasn't the only one. I gave them the names. Not out of spite. Not to hurt anyone. Just because, if I'm going down, I'm not taking silence with me. She looked up then. Her eyes were red, but calm. And you? I'm leaving today, I said gently. I found a place across town. Not far. I'll keep the house in your name. It was never about the assets. She nodded. I deserve that. I shook my head. It's not about what you deserve. It's about what I need. She leaned forward just slightly. Is there anything left between us? No, I answered, without cruelty. But that doesn't mean I want to see you suffer. Her chin quivered, but she held her composure. For once, there was no spin, no defense, no CEO voice trying to control the narrative. She was just Courtney. And that, oddly, brought me some peace. I didn't think I'd survive losing everything, she said. But now that it's gone, I can finally breathe. I stood, walked over to the counter, and placed my keys next to the fruit bowl. I hope you rebuild something better, I said. She stood too. Travis. I turned, and for the first time in months, I smiled. Not because I'd won. Not because I got revenge. But because I was free. You don't owe me anything anymore, I said. Just don't lie to yourself ever again. Then I walked out the door. No screaming. No tears. No dramatic exit. Just clarity. And you know what? That was enough. I moved into a small apartment near Memorial Park. Took up running again. Reconnected with a few old friends I'd slowly lost touch with during the years when my life revolved around someone else's ambition. I started freelancing full-time, and with each project, I started to feel like a man again, not a prop in someone else's narrative. Weeks passed. One morning, I got a letter, handwritten, from Courtney. It wasn't a plea. It wasn't a love letter. It was a thank you for not destroying her, for letting her collapse without kicking to pieces, and for reminding her, even silently, that she could still choose honesty, even if it came late. She'd started therapy, left the corporate world completely, said she was volunteering with a women's leadership nonprofit that taught integrity in business. I believed her. Sometimes healing doesn't come with fireworks. Sometimes it comes with silence, with distance, with accountability. I haven't seen her since, and I don't need to, because I didn't walk away with bitterness. I walked away with something better. Myself.